Stuff in chat. Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is a very special Demcast Democracy briefing today. We're focusing on the future of the Democratic Party, and we've invited some of the party's brightest stars to come and talk about their run for DNC positions. And we will get to them in just a minute. But first, for those of you who are new to Demcast, Demcast is a 501c4 nonprofit organization dedicated to winning the digital war against right-wing extremists online. We do that by empowering, recruiting, empowering, emboldening you guys, folks, regular everyday folks with social media accounts, to use those accounts strategically to spread pro-democracy messaging and to defeat right-wing propaganda narratives in digital spaces, which is where over half of Americans now get their news. So this is really important work. This is activism. This is digital door knocking. You guys who are on this call are the biggest digital amplification team, pro-democracy amplification team in the world. And so thank you for all of the work that you do. Want to do a quick shout out to our Director of Special Projects, Lee Helberg, who has been started to help us pull these democracy briefings together and make them even better and more planned and executed. So thank you, Lee, so much. And with that, Jamie, do you want to introduce Rachel, and then we should get going?
We're so excited because Rachel Green and the Women of Color Coalition is co-sponsoring this event tonight. If you guys don't know the Women of Color Coalition, they are a grassroots political organization dedicated to building the political power of Black, Indigenous women and communities of color while supporting candidates and elected officials who best reflect our progressive policy mission and values. So Rachel is the founder and CEO of the Women of Color Coalition. She is a fellow DNC delegate from New Jersey, and she is a pretty passionate, badass woman, if I don't say so. So we're so excited to have those guys co-sponsor tonight.
Oh, right back at you, my sister. Well, Jamie, Nick, and Lee, thank you so much as always for always including us in these wonderful collaborations. As many of you may or may not know, we've done several of these wonderful collaborations, and they have always been so successful in educating the community on what's actually happening out there. So with that being said, I'm going to jump right into the questions because I know we have a tight schedule this evening.
I think we're going to let Malcolm speak for a few minutes first.
Okay, my apologies. Malcolm, please, my dear. Look, I'm ready to hit you right with the questions. Put you on the hot seat. With that being said, Malcolm, please, the floor is yours.
And just by way of introduction for everybody who, if you're not familiar with Malcolm, hopefully you are. I had the great fortune of getting to talk to him on the floor or in the sort of outer rim of the DNC convention this summer. Wonderful man, Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, North Philadelphia native, thought leader and legislator, currently serves in the Philadelphia General Assembly. He has been a key leader in protecting voting rights, expanding worker protections, enacting common sense gun safety policies, and rooting out government corruption and waste. Malcolm, the floor is yours. Thank you for coming.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And I would not be a Philadelphian if I did not start by saying, go Birds. Just go Birds. There's nowhere else to start. It was an incredible night. But let me get down to business by saying the most important phrase in any language. Thank you. Thank you to Jamie, Nick, Rachel, Lee, the entire team, and each and every one of you who are taking time to be here. Because if you are here, I know it's because you care about the future of this country. And I hope more specifically that there are some people who you love best in the world, folks you could not imagine your life without, who you know deserve to be treated with a level of decency, dignity, respect that for so many folks we know is out of reach. I always start there because we can talk a lot about what we do and who we are, but I think why we do what we do really is at the core of this work. I grew up in the heart of North Philly. If any of you know Temple University, then you know exactly where I'm from. My dad was trained as a social worker right there at the university. My mom was trained as a CNA and spent most of her career actually in home health care, working with folks who had really significant physical limitations, in some instances, mental health challenges. And what I can never shake is that, as you might imagine, things were tough for my parents when they were together. And I always make this point that I really did hit the jackpot and that I got the best parents in the world. They just kind of fucking hated each other. And so what that meant for me is that they divorced when I was pretty young. I ended up getting my first job at 12 years old. When my parents separated, things were even tougher. And so I lived 5 or 6 different places by the time I graduated high school and buried both of those aforementioned parents by the time I was 27 because they didn't have access to the type of care that every single person deserves. And so everything that we are going to talk about, everything that I do is frankly recognizing that my story is not unique at all. It's not unique at all. You can walk outside and bump into 3 people who have a story just like it. And in the wealthiest nations that ever exist, there shouldn't be so many stories like this. We should be in a place where every single person gets treated with that God-given dignity that they are imbued with, but that so many folks who are so-called leaders spend every single day trying to rip away. And so I'm really looking forward to answering your questions and just so grateful that each and every one of you recognize that in this moment, we are not helpless. And in this moment, we can, and I believe we will, reinvigorate, reimagine the Democratic Party to win local, to win nationally, and make a difference in people's lives. So I'll stop there. And Rachel, put me on that hot seat. Let's go.
I love it. I love it. I think you are ready, to be frankly honest with you. With that being said, I think the first question that I actually have for you, when you spoke about your background, it made me immediately think about how important it is for our leaders at the DNC to be able to be relatable and be able to understand the trials and tribulations of our fellow brothers and sisters in the community on the ground, to be frankly honest with you. As DNC vice chair, what would you do or what strategy would you put in place to truly have that army or grassroots network on the ground to truly get the messaging and the information about the things that the Democrats?
This is why what you're doing tonight matters so much. And I don't say that to be solicitous just because I'm with you. I think that first of all, we have to tell a different story about ourselves. One of the things that is deeply frustrating to me is that there's an entire cottage industry completely dedicated to crapping on Democrats. I mean, literally, if you want to be on TV right now, just go write an op-ed about how Democrats suck, and they will have you on immediately. Talk about how you were a donor who changed and now you're raising money for Trump. Oh my God, they will put you on. They'll send out push notifications. They will platform and prioritize your words about how bad and how irreparable the Democratic Party is. Listen, in 2024, we lost a close election. And the impact of that is not lost on any of us. We're watching it in real time every single day. A guy so weak, so feckless, so inappropriate to be at the highest levels of your local nonprofit and certainly at the highest levels of our government. But here's the truth if we look at what happened in the last election. The more you look down ballot, the better Democrats actually did in many places. And so I think that all of us who want us to not lose close elections, want us to win, certainly we should be thoughtful about where do we fall short? How can we do things better? But we should be honest that there are how many op-eds have already been written, how many think pieces, how much time has been spent on legacy media talking about some of the areas that Democrats could have done better in. But how much time has been spent talking about what Democrats did well? How much time has been spent talking to the candidates that won in tough districts? And so if we don't talk to them, then we're not learning the lessons of the last election. We are just doing what so often has been done, where we all get in a circle and beat up on the Democratic Party and treat us like Charlie Brown with the football. And sometimes we're Charlie Brown and we're holding the football. And I say enough of it. I am damn proud to be a Democrat. I refuse to spend the next 4 years somehow apologizing for wanting to ensure that people can go to the doctor when they're sick and afford the prescription when they leave the appointment. I'm not apologizing for that. I'm not apologizing for thinking that if you work a full day, if you know what it means to come home and your feet hurt and your hands hurt and you're tired, that you should probably be paid more than $7.25 an hour. I'm not going to apologize for standing up with people who want to organize on the job because they want a union. We should apologize for that? Give me a break. We're not apologizing. And I think a part of the challenge we ran into is that people broadly agreed with a lot of the things Democrats believe from a policy perspective, but they had no clue that we did it or had anything to do with it. You know, my sister said something to me that I think about all the time. She said, Donald Trump lies with more confidence than y'all tell the truth. And she said, you shouldn't have to be the brother of a state rep to understand what was in the Inflation, Reduction Act, for example. You shouldn't have to personally know a political leader to understand what the infrastructure dollars meant in a very, personal, specific way to individual communities. And so that's why I, just reiterate what I said at the beginning. What you are doing tonight matters so much. We have to get much better at telling our story and telling that story from a place of power, from a place of confidence, and from a place where we let people know that if given the opportunity, Democrats will deliver big things for people's lives. And frankly, we have a record that we have to tell people. And I'll end with this note because I think this was one of the prime examples of the misinformation and disinformation that's out there. I saw it was a YouGov poll that came out last week where 46%, I believe, of Americans incorrectly believe that Donald Trump's popular vote victory was larger than Joe Biden's. Joe Biden won by 4.5 points. Donald Trump won by 1.8 or 1.7, whatever it ended up being at the end. And the media is telling me that the 1.7 is somehow bigger than the 4.5. And the Democratic Party ought to close down and close up shop and join the uniparty and bow down to Donald Trump. I'm not bowing down. I'm not rolling over. And I believe that Democrats have a record to run on, but we have to get in a position where we're confident about telling it because nobody wants to join a pity party. People want to join something that is serious about winning the future. And we win the future when we tell our story on our terms. And a part of that is sort of giving up on this belief, this false belief that the legacy media is our friend. They are not our friends.
So now another question popped into my head as you were talking. How do we do that then? How do we get that message? How do we get that message truly on the ground? Because millions of dollars were spent by two professionals, consultants, the best in their field, right? Throughout that campaign, and very minimal of it went to the ground for that actual ground game. So how as the vice chair, you're going to be able to put strategy in place to hopefully change it?
So I think we have to do a couple of things. We have to hold a couple of things in our head at the same time. The first thing is we should not get wrapped up in our own cult of personality where we think, oh my God, I saw somebody do a great interview. And so that's the savior that we've been looking for. If you are looking for somebody who's going to save this country and move it forward, you can either go find a mirror in your home, or if you have a cell phone, turn on the selfie version of the camera. And that person that shows up, that's the person that's going to save it. I'm done with these cults of personality. I'm not asking anybody to join my cult of personality. My husband wouldn't join my cult. Okay, so if he's not in, I don't want you to join. I think that we have to approach this from a two-step process. First of all, we can't boil the ocean. We should be clear-eyed about the fact that at last Monday, on Martin Luther King's worst possible birthday that he ever had, many of you remember on that stage, sitting right behind the current guy in the White House, were the people who own the platforms of all the major media platforms. And so we should be clear that we are up against folks who are utilizing algorithms, utilizing technology to actively depress our messaging getting out. And so when Democrats are out communicating, again, we can't get into this, masochism's, cycle where we're like, well, we're just not communicating well enough. No, we are up against a very intentional, well-funded media ecosystem that is about actively depressing Democratic voices online, and certainly in legacy media. The prime example of legacy media was when the Washington Post refused to put out Kamala Harris's endorsement, but then went on an endorsement spree for these folks who are in the president's cabinet, who many of them have no qualifications to even be in those roles. And so that is like a prime example of what we're up against. And so what you all are doing is you're not boiling the ocean. You are using the platforms that you have where you are, talking to the people who know and trust you. There are a lot of people who are doing research on misinformation and disinformation. And if you look across the very thoughtful research that's out there, part of what you recognize or pick up on, or I have thematically, is that people don't know what to trust. But people do know who they trust. And who they trust are the people in their friend circles, the people in their group chats. There was one study that I read. Now, my husband is a professor, which is why I often reference studies. Okay, like I'm inundated at home with research and study. But there's one that talked about how so much of our political discourse has moved to group chats, which I saw actually in the lead up to the election. Because to post something political on Facebook, you're going to get maybe equal as many trolls as people who you actually know. And so a lot of people have said, I'm not going to post anything because I don't want to be inundated with what's going to come from that. And so they talk to the people they trust within their group chats. And so you recognizing and you all helping to train people to utilize the digital infrastructure that exists to talk to people within their network is really important. The second thing is what I said in my opening. We have to look local first. Here in Pennsylvania, we held on to the House majority for last session. We flipped it 2 years ago. We flipped it for the first time in 30 years. And then we held on to it for the first time, I believe, in like 40 years. Because 30 years ago when we got it, we lost it immediately. This time we held on to it. What does that tell you? It tells you that I have colleagues who won districts and who won communities that Donald Trump also won. People literally went on that same ballot, voted for them, and then didn't vote for Democrats on the top of the ticket. And so what the Democrats have to do is to shift the paradigm. We have this idea that we can come up with the best ideas from some high-paid consultants in DC, and then we can export those things out to communities, and it's going to work. When the reality is we need to import the things that are working on the ground into DC. And a part of the reason I decided to do this is because I'm running as somebody who has won local office multiple times. My neighbors have given me that incredible honor to be in Harrisburg and represent them. I've also run statewide. And even though I wasn't successful in this last election because of Donald Trump, and he had real coattails here in Pennsylvania statewide, I have to acknowledge that. But to be very clear, I got the most votes of any Democrat to run for Auditor General ever. And so, that experience, I think, is going to be really critical as a part of the leadership team for Democrats and people who are considering running for office and candidates who are standing for office in real time to know that there's somebody at the DNC who's not just paying lip service to down ballot, who's not just mentioning it when it's brought up to them, but somebody who gets it in their bones because this is what I do on a daily basis. And trying to build this party and support our candidates up and down the ballot has not been something I've just done on a one cycle basis. It's something I have a record that people can go back and look at of me showing up for people in this party because of my belief in what we can do together.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My goodness. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a powerhouse group of folks that are going to be on tonight, besides Malcolm. And thank you, Malcolm. You left us with a lot to think about. I have so many more questions for you, but I know we got to stay on schedule. And I'm going to get the Apollo hook. We'll get the Apollo hook soon, as they say. If I don't cut the dialogue off, but I could talk to you all night. So it was an absolute
thank you so much for taking the time
to chit chat with you. And thank you so much. You did an excellent job. We appreciate you.
Take care.
Take care.
Next up, we are so excited to welcome Raina Walters Morgan, and she is running for the DNC Vice Chair of Civic Engagement and Voter Participation. She is a Brooklyn Born in North Carolina, raised voting rights advocate and proud alumni at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and Howard University School of Law. Raina started her voting rights advocacy work in college, where she was the first woman of color and the second woman ever elected as student body president. And I was actually listening to the debate for vice chair last week for this, and oh my God, all of those candidates are fabulous. So I am so excited to hear from you tonight. So take it away.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for having me here. This is an election, the DNC election is an election that has only a few number of eligible voters, but it is an election that every single Democrat should care about. The officers for the party are going to set the tone for the next 4 years, and we've got to make sure that our officers are reflective of our party, reflective of our values, and quite frankly, who are going to roll up their sleeves and do the work because the threats are very real. We've seen from week one the threats that we face to our democracy, and so this election is important, and that's why I'm very excited to have tossed my hat in the ring to be the vice chair for civic engagement and voter participation. A little bit about me. I am a voting rights advocate at heart. I have been engaged in voting rights, voter registration, advocacy since I was in college. One of the first voting rights wins of my career, I'll claim, was when I was in college. I initiated efforts that led to the first satellite polling location within walking distance of campus. And that was really important because what I realized after a conversation with a mentor was that our campus was divided into about 5 precincts. Students did not have access to get to most of those precincts. They were not within walking distance. They were off of bus lines that were not close by. It was really, in my mind, intentional to dilute the voting power of a campus that was known to be a pretty progressive campus at the time. And that was really one of the first times that I realized that voting rights and the effort to suppress access to the ballot was, in fact, intentional. And so since that time, I have been doing my part to help protect voting rights. My path to the DNC was not linear. I worked in big law for a while. I worked at the Social Security Administration as a disability adjudicator, adjudicating disability claims. And then I decided that I did not like stability in my life, and I quit my good government job to go work on the Clinton campaign. And I was a regional voter protection director. And that was an amazing experience for me. I organized lawyers. I helped make sure that everyone knew the changes to the Ohio election laws. And I knew that I was, on the path to doing what I needed to be doing. I have done this work on the nonprofit side. I managed the 2018 election protection program in North Carolina for the nonprofits. And I eventually ended up at the DNC. I started in April of 2019. And I can tell you that the DNC was my dream job because I knew that if they had someone who actually knew what they were doing and cared about voting rights and cared about voter protection, that the DNC was an organization that was well suited to help lead the charge, to help build the infrastructure, to do the things that had not been done. Now, it was an uphill battle. I walked into an empty department and the National Voter Assistance Hotline rang to my cell phone. Do not recommend that. But over the course of the next 5 years, we were able to build the most robust voter protection programs in the DNC's history. I managed 2 of those programs, the 2020 presidential election and the 2022 midterms. Part of the reason why we were successful is because we helped change the mindset of what voter protection was and what it should be. Everyone thought about voter protection as election day volunteers and election day litigation. No one bothered to analyze any of the data that we collected. In fact, when I got to the DNC, we were just getting the data back from the 2016 election almost 3 years later. That's pointless. So I knew we had an uphill battle, but we were able to change the mindset of what a voter protection program was. And we shifted that from election day only operations to year-round education, organizing, and advocacy. And because of that, we were able to work with states across the country to build their programs. We know the program that works in North Carolina is not the same program that's going to work in Wyoming. And we had to make sure that we were intentional about meeting with states, understanding what their needs were, and helping them build a scalable program that met the need of that state. And that's why we were successful. That's why we were able to help shift the mindset. That's why we were able to help over 20 million voters through iwillvote.com by revamping those voter education pages. That's why we were able to expand the National Voter Assistance Hotline from ringing to my cell phone to hundreds of volunteers who dedicated thousands of hours, who helped hundreds of thousands of voters. And that's what the Democratic Party should be doing. That is the role of the DNC. The DNC really has to build the infrastructure to help Democrats win up and down the ballot. And we can't do that if we don't have people who are rolling up their sleeves to do that work, and who are rolling up their sleeves to make changes where changes need to be made. Looking to the future, I will say that my role as the director of the Voter Protection Department really helped inform what I see this vice chair role being in the future. For a little bit of context, this specific vice chair role is the one that is traditionally designated to work with the Voter Protection Department. So I've worked with the prior vice chairs. I've seen this role from a 360-degree angle. And what I know is that, one, we have to make sure that our technology is up to par. When I got to the DNC, some of our technology tools were neglected. And we have this tool, LBJ, for all of you voter protection volunteers. You've probably used it. It tracks our election incidents. It tracks questions that come in from the hotline. LBJ had the reputation of not working on election day. The one day that everyone needed this tool, the tool had the reputation of not working. And I knew that people would not trust us and would not want to use our tools if our tools were not reliable. So we focused on making sure our tools were reliable, thinking towards the future, thinking about making sure that people know that our tools exist. We launched a tool called the Voter Registration and Purge Tracker. This tool tracks changes in the voter file over time, and it lets you know who's been listed as an active, who's been purged, with their name, their phone number, so you can run re-registration programs. This was a huge help to us in 2020. We reached over 300,000 inactive and purge voters to let them know that they had been removed from the files. But people don't know about it now because, again, that knowledge changes, and we've like the turnover in state parties change, and we've got to make sure that people in the states know that these tools exist. And then also thinking about technology in terms of social media. We know people are getting their information on social media. Unfortunately, a lot of it is on Meta. But we have to make sure that we know that we've got to meet people where they are. Using social media, we have missed opportunities to engage with people where they are. And so we've got to do a better job of being on the platforms that people are on. We also have to think about AI. I know it's a little bit scary. It's a new emerging technology, but there are opportunities to utilize AI to drive voter participation. We know that people are getting their information on the internet. One of the things that we experimented with was using AI chatbots and virtual assistants to create voter information chatbots and virtual assistants on campaign websites. It's a simple way that we can make sure that if someone is already on a website looking for information, that they can also get information about voting. I'm sure there are many other ways, but we've got to have the conversation, and we've got to be in the middle of that conversation, because what we know about AI is that the outputs are only as good as the prompts that are put in and as good as the people who are inputting that information. And so we've got to make sure that the Democrats are on the forefront of providing good, accurate information, since we know some platforms like Meta are no longer focusing on combating disinformation and misinformation. And then finally, I know I've been talking for a while. I could talk about this stuff all day. I'm kind of a nerd about it. I have the time to dedicate to doing this job. The threats are too real. We've seen what week one looks like in the Trump administration. We know that they are pushing an anti-voter agenda. We have got to make sure that our officers at the DNC are going to be actively engaged. They've got to show up. They've got to do the work. They've got to roll up their sleeves. The threats are too real to wear multiple hats. And we've got to have people who are going to be questioning not just how we're moving forward and setting the tone for moving forward, but our leaders also have to make sure that we are connecting and building a bridge between the voters, the grassroots organizers, and the advocates on the ground, and the decisions that are being made at the leadership level at the DNC. I'm running to be the change that I want to see. So that's a little bit about me. I am happy to open it up for questions.
Thank you. Thank you. I think one of the main questions that I would ask, I think at this point, and I think I'm going to summarize quite a bit of probably what some other folks would want to ask as well. I felt you did such a great summary on the position and what has already been done. I guess what I would ask now is if you there was no limit to the money, no limit to the resources, what would you like to see put in place in your role as, vice chair of civic engagement and voter protection?
This is a great question. One, I would like to see voter protection staff in every state and every territory, not 3 months before an election, not 6 months before an election, but now. What we know is that when people are on the ground, they are building relationships, they're understanding and learning the changes that are happening in the law, and they're at the table. I can tell you some of the best voter protection programs that we saw over the course of the 5 years that I was at the DNC were the programs where they had staff on the ground and they built programs, they became thought leaders in their communities, and they were at the forefront of fighting every single fight. The decisions about voting are going to happen in the legislatures. We know as these legislatures go back into session, there are going to be a lot of anti-voter legislation introduced. And that's what staff can help with. We've got to have people who are monitoring. We have to have people who are organizing. You may remember the Texas walkout that happened when they tried to introduce that monster voter suppression bill. They might not have had the numbers to block it, but what they did have was the resolve to make a point and to make a difference. And the voter protection director was involved intimately in that and working with teams on the ground. Those are the types of things that you can do when you've got staff on the ground. So one, I would have staff on the ground now, early. We've got elections in 2025 that we've got to prepare for. I would also make sure that we are engaged in our communities in a way that is a lot more meaningful than what we have been doing. Again, you can't show up into a community a few months before an election and expect that they're going to vote for you. If you're not in the communities, you don't build trust. If you don't build trust, they're not going to vote for you or they're going to stay home. We have missed opportunities to engage our communities in a meaningful way. I've had so many conversations with DNC members and advocates who basically said, look, the campaign, Kamala Harris ran the most phenomenal campaign that she could run with the time that she was given. But what I heard consistently was that there was no infrastructure or insufficient infrastructure before she got there. It was too little, too late. By the time we showed up, people were already cynical. You can't go to a community when you want something. You've got to have those conversations early. And so if money were not an object, I would absolutely make sure that we were in communities earlier, utilizing our caucuses and councils, utilizing our DNC members, our grassroots organizers, our advocates. People know what's going on. People have their pulse on the ground of what is happening. And for some reason, the messages that people are telling us, the concerns that people are sharing, are not being translated to the decisions that are being made at the DNC leadership level and at the campaign leadership level. And I think that this vice chair has to be a bridge. That means traveling. That means having in-person engagements, having virtual engagements. It really means engaging in a way that unfortunately we just haven't been doing.
Wow, excellent, excellent. Love. And in the chat, Stephen, I saw you. You're right. VR is a very fabulous way for us to kind of bridge that gap when it comes to technology. Excellent, excellent. Wow. With that, Raina, thank you so much.
Thank you for
Wow.
having me.
Lee,
Thank you.
Jamie, and Nick, we got us a good one tonight. I love it, love it,
I,
love it.
I'm so
Well
excited about these
done.
candidates.
Yes, yes,
This is
yes.
fantastic.
The future is very bright with the DNC. I am so excited. So, so excited. Raina, thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
thank you,
Raina.
thank you.
All right, and next, Raina, thank you so much. That was inspiring. And we keep on rolling. So next, we have Shasti Conrad, who is running for DNC vice chair. She's the first woman of color and youngest chair of the Washington State Democrats. As chair, she made fundraising history at the organization by raising nearly $9 million in her first term. She's also the first South Asian woman to lead a state party in the entire country. And I'll just say I have been invited and welcomed on the Washington State Democrats Zoom calls in the past, and have always had a great time. And so Shasti, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Nick. And thank you, Rachel and Jamie and everybody. And I saw my pal Yvonne Brandon out in the chat, who's also from Washington State and works with Democrats for diversity and inclusion, and so many friends out there. I'm Shasti Conrad. I am chair of Washington State Democrats, and it's such a pleasure to join everybody. I was just listening to Malcolm and Raina before me, and I think you all are absolutely right. We've got such incredible talent that is running for, these seats of the DNC, but I think it's also an important reminder of the bench that we do have, that I think sometimes we forget, that, there's all these really credible younger people too that are stepping up, and that if we make space for them, there's room for all of us to be leading. So I decided to jump into the DNC vice chair race, in part because Washington State is the only state that really withstood the Republican shift that happened nationally. We went the least red when you looked at Trump versus Harris at 0.25%. But if you include all of our statewide, which went all Democrat for the first time in 60 years, we actually went more blue. And I think that is the reason why that happened is because we have been running on economic messaging. We have a really strong partnership with our labor allies, with our unions. We have demonstrated cycle after cycle that we do deliver for regular Washingtonians. And we also have a state party that is doing year-round organizing. We have a full-time staff. I am one of about 10 full-time paid state party chairs in the entire country. When I first got elected 2 years ago, I was shocked to learn that the Democratic Party didn't have the infrastructure and was relying on volunteer labor throughout this country. And I think that it's important that we pay people for their work and that we make sure that we are investing in the infrastructure in order to win every year, cycle after cycle. There are no off years. The work to win next year starts right now. We've got two big governor's races in this country, in Virginia and New Jersey this year. In my state, we have a lot of municipal races, and these are opportunities for us to be testing messaging, in trying new strategies, trying different tools, and seeing what the mood is in this moment, as we know that the Trump administration is going to continue to just wreak absolute havoc on our communities. And we need to be ready to hold their feet to the fire and call them out every single opportunity that we have to make sure that people see the damage, and that Democrats cannot shy away from it. We cannot play small. We have to be ready for this battle and this fight, and that work has to start right now. So, I came into this because I wanted to really amplify the work that we are doing in Washington, but also I was a little bit worried in the initial bad takes of 2024 that this party was maybe starting to turn away from our base, which is, mostly built by women of color, particularly Black women, and, young people, rural voters. And we needed to make sure that we were building a winning coalition and not trying to become, the left's version of Trump or, Joe Rogan of the left, right? But we were going to be our party at the strongest, most boldest that we can possibly be. And that our party has to look like this nation. It has to be diverse. It has to put people like us at the table. We have to have a seat at the table. And so that was incredibly important to me. As a millennial woman of color, I've often been one of the only ones in many Democratic Party rooms, and I just can't let that happen. We have to change it. If we do our jobs correctly in 2028, we will win back the White House, and the next president will get to choose DNC leadership. This is our opportunity right now to pick change agents, to pick people who are going to do things differently, who are going to build a bigger table, a longer table, make more room, and are going to be able to actually look at this from the generational change that we need to look at this work And so I feel like I'm that person and would love to serve alongside Malcolm. And I think Raina has an amazing chance as well and would love to serve with them too. There's 3 vice chair positions, so there's room for us. And, I really just am excited by the opportunity and want to create space to answer folks' questions. So thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm in an Auntie Rachel role right now because I'm just so thrilled and excited to see you step up for this candidacy. Um, talk to us, talk to Auntie Rachel and Jamie and Uncle Nick and Aunt Lee. Yeah, in safe space. Tell us old heads, what's going on? Talk to us. Because I know I was talking to my kids. I have a 32-year-old, 36-year-old, and they're like, guys, I love you. Of course, I'm going to vote for Kamala. But they were point blank with me. They said, I'm going to be honest with you, what I'm hearing on the street, I really do think he's going to win. And my mind just I couldn't even hear him. I couldn't wrap around it. I was full steam ahead. It was all Kamala. I couldn't even think about it. But obviously, they saw something that we couldn't see, to be frankly honest with you. Talk to us. What's going on? What was going on the streets that we just didn't see, to be frankly honest with you?
I think in large part, people feel like, I was just reading this data from Navigator Research, which says people know that the Republicans are bullies. They know that they're not good people. They know that it's not great policies. They know all of that. But they think the Democrats won't stand up for them. They think that Democrats won't actually, when we get the opportunities to lead, that we shy away from it, that we're not bold, that we're not strong, that we won't stand up and fight for them. And that, we sort of vacillate, we hide from, the sort of taking things on, boldly and strongly. And I think, it's human psychology. You want to be on a winning team. You want to be, when a bully is skulking around a playground, you don't want to take the step out and face that sort of potential coming back to hit you. And I think, look, Trump didn't win on policy. Our policies are popular. We are winning, even in red states, on a higher minimum wage, on protecting reproductive rights. We are winning on policy. But Trump was able to harness the anger and the rage of feeling like things were not getting better, feeling like change is slow, feeling like we weren't doing what we needed to do to actually stand up for people. And I think we as Democrats, when we do that, when we play that game and we sort of and we do things like we meddle in the primaries and we spend money against younger progressive candidates that are widely popular and often people of color, when we stand with billionaires and millionaires and we don't take corporate money out of our organizations, when we aren't exposing the dark money that we're taking, right? It's easy to be written off as hypocrites. It's easy to be written off. The amount of young people who say, yeah, Shasti, y'all are the same. Both parties are the same. And we know we're doing the work. I feel like what makes me a Democrat is that I genuinely care. And when I'm around other strong Democrats, it's because they actually care about other people. And when I hear from the Republicans, it's not that. And I know that we are different. We believe in democracy. We are different. But to the average person, when, young people are getting beat up on their campuses over, ceasefire and the investment into a, military industrial complex, and, it's not easier to live and you can't afford rent. Yeah, you're going to be mad. And you're going to look at, hey, we gave you power. Why aren't you using it? So I think that that's what's being called for in this moment, is that we cannot take the lesson can't be play smaller or be more like them. The lesson has to be, here's our opportunity to shake the trees and actually stand loud and proud about what it means to be a Democrat, what it means to stand up for people, what it means to act that we are greater because of our diversity, not less than. And that the gains that we have made in talking about diversity, equity, inclusion are a positive. We are better because of the immigrants that are in this country. We are better because we are trans inclusive. We are better because we are building a space that reflects all of us. We cannot turn our back on that. And yes, we got to talk about the things that people care about, which is cost of groceries, whether they can afford their rent, but it's not an either or. These things are so interconnected. And that is what I think we have to be talking about. And we as Democrats, we weren't really doing that. And we weren't championing our wins in a way that deeply connected with people.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I hope someone's taking notes somewhere because Shesty just threw it down there. She just laid it down there. I think there's your playbook right there, ladies and gentlemen, for moving forward. To be honest
This
with you, with
video
the
is being
DNC.
recorded.
Yes, yes,
And
yes. I
we
love
will
it.
make
I
sure
love it
everybody has
because
access.
woo! And just the future is bright, ladies and gentlemen. The future is bright. I know because I brag about my kids all the time, but I just love the passion and the fire and the energy from the youth coming up. But no, your aunties and stuff. We got your back out there. We're still here. We're still here. We still got the fight in us. We're ready to do this thing.
It
Um,
means a lot. Really quickly, if I can just add one very quick thing, which
yes.
is I think Demcast and all of you have figured out that we have to be in places where it is about like those micro influencers. It's about having authentic voices who can talk to people that are trusted. That type of messaging is what we should have been doing all along, and that the Republicans figured out you all figured it out, but the party didn't figure it out. And that is where this works. The fact there's 200 plus people on a Zoom in the middle of the day on a weekday is proof that this makes a difference. And this is where we have to be showing up everywhere. And we're going to look for Dems. Sometimes it's going to be a little uncomfortable, but that's okay. We have to be in those spaces. And so I just want to give a massive shout out to all of you because I think you truly have figured out a model that we have got to be replicating and amplifying and supporting all over this country, and finding the people that are on like a Zoom like this to be our messengers in rural communities, in suburban and urban communities, people that are trusted, who are able to reach people that when we put the Dem label on us, turn us off immediately.
How long we've been waiting
Yes.
for someone to say that. In the
I see you.
Democratic
I see you. Yeah.
We have to clone Chastity. I'm telling you, every state needs her. I just adore you. You're fabulous. Oh my
Can we
goodness.
clone you
Love,
for a
love,
Utah
love.
chair?
Yeah. Oh.
Please?
And we're still over here in Jersey. Come over to Jersey. Come on.
Yeah.
We got the big race this year.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And we're gonna win it.
Love it. Love it. All right. So what I'm going to do is I apologize. I'm going to have to make sure that we stay on schedule here. Oh,
The
my
next
goodness.
guest is not here yet. So if Shasty's on,
Okay.
can you stay on for another minute or two for another question?
Happy to.
Do you mind? No, wonderful. All right.
We would keep you on all night. So
well, right. I am what I'm thinking is what can we do to have the younger folks more engaged? What I'm with, I guess, so many organizations I'm involved in, and it's always a staple of our conversation. And we'll look around the room and we know so many of our younger brothers and sisters that are out there, and we just somehow cannot get my apologies. Somehow we just cannot get them to come to the room with us and have the conversation. And maybe we just need to be told that maybe when they come to the table, somehow we're pushing them away. And maybe that's something that a frank conversation needs to be had. We need to.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
I can
Well,
hop in.
Yeah, I think you got the gist there.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, I think, that is the question I feel like every cycle we ask, like, how do we bring more young people in? And, I was actually meeting with the high school Dems yesterday, and I said, I feel like youth organizing has almost become a buzzword that feels devoid of meaning at times, but it's incredibly important. And I always feel like we do have to trust young people to lead us. Like, their leadership's gonna look different than how we might want to do it, but we have to get out of the way sometimes and be able to create the space for them to do it their way. But we have to be able to hold them in support. Like I remember being a young organizer and, being scared all of the time about making a mistake, being worried that I was going to do something wrong or lead us astray or do something. And we, as people who have been in this work for longer, have to hold the space for them them so that they know we have their backs and that we will create that space for them. One very real thing that we can do at the DNC is that nobody, as far as we can tell, that's been appointed is under 35. We can change that up in the appointments, and we need to make sure that young people are put on the committees where decisions are being made, and that we are actually investing in creating a budget line item for our young Dems, our college Dems, and our high school Dems so that they can build out the chapters that they have and really make sure that they've got the support to be doing the work that they're already doing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Shasti. You've inspired all of us. So excited that you were able to join us, and we'll be seeing you again, hopefully. And Damie, Marilyn Davis is here. You want to do the intro here? Thank you, Shasti.
Yes. And Rachel's computer died, so she's grabbing her power cord and she'll be back on in just a minute. So we all know what tech happens. So, one of the most underrated positions at the DNC, everyone focuses on the chair, but we know now how important vice chair is. But now we have Marilyn Davis, who's running for secretary, and she served in the Obama Biden administration as a political appointee at the U.S. Department of Labor, where she worked under the leadership of Secretary Tom Perez. And she has also served as chief of staff to Congressman Karen Bass and deputy commission of labor under former Governor John Corzine. So she's also worked as a national political representative for the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, and on numerous presidential, gubernatorial, state, and local campaigns. And young people are very important, but so is experience. So I'm thrilled to turn it over to Marilyn.
Thank you so much for the introduction and the opportunity to come before this group tonight. I want to say thank you to Rachel Green for inviting me. I'm running for DNC secretary because yesterday's DNC cannot be today's DNC. We saw last week, just in less than a week of President Trump being in office, the changes that he has made to roll back the country to 1865. The people who have brought us this far, the DNC, they've done the best of their ability, but we need more in this moment to meet what is happening in our country. And I'm running for secretary, one, because I have experience, and as was shared in my bio, I have worked in every part of the democratic ecosystem. So I come with the experience. I'm currently the secretary in another organization, so I know the role of the secretary. But what is so important about the role of the secretary is the secretary's office is a keeper of information, keeper of data, the data of how many members we have, and has the ability to look at things from a high level to say where there are gaps in our system, where there are people who are missing from the process who need to be engaged. And we'll work through the Democratic leaders, the chairs of the parties, the DNC members, to make sure that the DNC membership represents the local communities where we are. We lost 15 million people this last election. And in order for us to rebuild the trust with the voters, we need new leadership. We need new leadership that can go from the suites to the streets to re-engage the very voters that we need to face the battle ahead. And the battle ahead, we know is going to be heavy because of what we've already experienced in the last 7 days. And we need experienced people, but we need people who have trust and have the ability to go into the communities. So I'm running for secretary of the DNC because, again, yesterday's DNC cannot be in today's DNC. But more important than that, 94% of Black women voted for the Democratic Party. 94% of Black women have been the base of the Democratic Party. And we deserve one of the top 4 positions of the party. It would be a disrespect for us to watch Donald Trump roll back and get rid of diversity and inclusion and equity, for the Democratic Party to do just the same, to take the same actions by not providing women of color an opportunity in the top 4 positions. No disrespect for those who are running for vice chair, but the chair, the secretary, the treasurer, the finance chair cannot be occupied by all people who are not of color. And so today I'm running for this particular seat because, 1, we deserve a seat at the table, and 2, I have the experience. I have also worked for the DNC So I understand the culture of the party. And again, the time that we're in right now in this country requires more. It requires more than the status quo. It requires more than niceties. If we need people who will fight for and fight with the people. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you this evening.
I think we're getting Rachel back.
If you have any questions, I'm happy to take questions.
There's Rachel.
There we
Rachel,
go.
she's been
Sorry about
in
that,
person
everyone.
tonight. So,
Hey, Rachel.
Hey, Marilyn, how are you?
Good, good, good.
I know they introduced you.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm sure you've told them all about your wonderful self. So I think one of the first questions, I think we're ready for questions now. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yep, you logged in
Yes,
just in time for
right.
questions.
There we go. There we go. Technology working at its best, right? Right. Actually, the faux pas was on me. But anywho, Marilyn, with that being said, with your wonderful, wonderful background, tell me how, as secretary, you're going to be what I see as the glue that kind of brings all this together. You have your chair, you have your vice chairs, you have so many moving parts. As secretary, what is your strategic plan? How do you presume to bring your wisdom, years of experience, knowledge, um, just breadth of resources as well, the folks you know, just the avenues that you can go into that you bring to the table. Just talk to us. Tell us how you're going to be able to pull that together in a strategic plan as secretary.
So I'm running on three tenets. One is transparency, accountability, and engagement. Under transparency, do you know that in 2025, the DNC does not have a membership portal? So in order for DNC members to receive any kind of information on the party, they have to go to the secretary's office. Well, I think that's inefficient. In this day and time, we need a membership portal where DNC members can access DNC information, not just the information, but the information such as the membership roster, the rules and bylaws and charter, the org chart for the organization. Like that should be somewhere on a members portal that is private and protected for members to access DNC information, because they need all the tools they can get in the field to battle on the field. We have so much in front of us. Every state is coming after us, especially if you're in the southern part of the country or the Midwestern part of the country, or the western part of the country rather. So much is coming at us, and our members need tools readily at their fingertips. They don't need to call the secretary's office or wait on staff to respond to them. So one, I'm running on transparency. And two, under accountability. When I was Deputy Commissioner of Labor in New Jersey, I would convene what was called the Chat and Chew. And the Chat and Chew was an opportunity for me to meet with the staff and learn from them, to listen and learn from the staff, because they were the subject matter expertise. So what I would do as Secretary of DNC is have open office hours so that I can meet with DNC staffers, hear from them, hear what's happening in Florida, hear what's happening in Tennessee, hear what's happening in South Carolina. And then I, in turn, can take that back to the leadership table to say, here's what is needed in the field, and be an advocate for DNC members. That is what DNC members need. And lastly, well, in addition to that, DNC members also need to be treated with respect. They are elected members in the states. They're not appointed, they're elected, and therefore should be treated as an equal party to a equal stakeholder in the party. And lastly, under engagement, DNC members, if we can't engage our DNC members, how are we going to engage the 15 million people who said they did not trust us this election cycle? So first and foremost, we have to start internally and then work externally. So part of the internal work that we need to do is better communicate with our own members. We should have a newsletter so members understand what is happening, where the chair is going, what's going on inside the party. But we should also provide members with opportunities to give us feedback on where meetings should take place, how meetings should be structured, what should be on the agenda of the meeting. It should not be staff driven, it should be member driven. And we're missing that, which is why we're missing the 15 million people who didn't vote for this election cycle.
Love, 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 love. How would you be able to work with your partners, the other officers, to be able to pull together such a blueprint to be able to allow, whether they're a volunteer or paid staff, to be able to parallel those two avenues to work together to get the messaging out and to get the work done on the ground?
So I have worked on 6 presidential campaigns, the last 2 as volunteers. And I think it's important to have people who are experienced, who've been there, done that, who can bring that experience inside the DNC. So as I work internally to make sure that we have our members are equipped to do the battle outside, that someone internally understands what they need on the other side. And at the leadership table, I can lend my experience, again, working for organized labor, working on 6 presidential campaigns, working in state government. I can lend that expertise to the table because no other candidate has the experience that I have. No other candidate has worked in every single part of the ecosystem of the Democratic Party. No one else. And so I can bring that to the table and work with the person who will be the vice chair of community engagement and civic community engagement and voter protection, and share my knowledge and share my Rolodex. As you already know, my relationship expands across the country, and therefore I can bring those resources to bear. But what I really look to do as secretary is bring some best practices to the table. So again, as we convene, as I use my convening power to bring together the DNC members and bring them in community, that we can share what's happening well that's in California that can be helpful to the folks in Florida, or what's happening well in New York that could be helpful to folks over in Connecticut. Like, we need to be able to share our best practices and share what we're seeing in the States. Because as you know, if it happens in California, it's going to come to New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. If it's happening in Alabama, it's going to happen also in Georgia, and South Carolina, and Florida. So if we share what's happening, what we see on the ground, we can better combat what's coming at us. And instead of being on the defense, we could be on the offense. But until we start bringing our folks together and not, siloing folk and keeping them separate from each other, and therefore they can't share information, we'll never get there. And again, in the secretary's office, the secretary controls the membership roster. Yet, if I want to call someone from California, I don't have that access to information without having to go to the secretary's office. The time of gatekeeping is over. We are in a dire situation, and we need all the resources in the toolbox to defend ourselves and defend our country and make sure that the people, the least of us, are protected, because they're looking at us to help them. They're looking at us to fight on their behalf. And if we are not equipped to stand in the gap for those who need us, then we need to move out of the way.
Love it, love it, love it. I guess the next question then is, there's so many people that are watching and they're listening and they're paying attention, but they want to be more engaged and involved. How are you going to help pull them in?
So this is a candle, and the candle has 2 ends. One part is you have to get involved locally where you are in your state. But on the other end, you also have to connect with other people who are, especially in the seat of power, in the nerve center of the power dynamic, and connect with folk in DC. There are opportunities to go to events that happen in DC. So whether it's the Congressional Black Caucus, if you're African American, and that's open to everybody, or the Congressional Hispanic Institute has their conference every year. It's an opportunity to understand what the issues are, get to meet people from all across the country. We need to seize every opportunity there is to network amongst each other so we can understand what's happening. When Netroots happen, we need to be at Netroots so we understand what's on the minds of the progressives. We need to be in all these rooms. So when the NAACP has their convention, we need to be there as well, so that we connect with the people who are connected to the system. And therefore we can influence them and they can influence the system. Every Saturday, National Action Network has an event right here in New York City. So we need to, and again, whether it's, you can find me on social media. I pretty much stay on Instagram. So you can find me there. There are opportunities. And if you get on my email list, I will share with you, here's what's happening so that you can plug in, because we need soldiers in every room, in every space and place. Because I'm telling you, what keeps me awake at night is, the evilness is amongst us. I just had this conversation with people that the wickedness in high places, and I'm really fearful of what this administration could do to people. And when I say this, I'm from South Carolina, I'm from a rural part of South Carolina, and the people where I live, they work in factories. And if their jobs disappear because of technology or offshoring their jobs, they have nothing left. They have a high school education, and without those jobs, they won't be able to take care of their families. So it is important that we stay informed, that those of us who have the ability to go to these events and conferences to network and understand what the issues are, and we bring that information back home, bring it back to our communities and share with them what is happening so that we can be armed and guarded. As they say, forearmed is forewarned is forearmed. So I believe in that, and I think that's for those of us who want to get involved. There is an opportunity for you to get involved, and certainly, the DM me on Instagram. I will absolutely connect you with things that I know that's happening as I hear them.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. My goodness. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's Marilyn Davis, a wonderful Marilyn Davis, fellow Jersey girl. So I'm a little biased here. So snaps. Good luck to you. And thank you so much for coming in and helping us out tonight. As always, my sister always shows up for me, and I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I'll see you on the
Thank
other
you
side.
so much.
Okay, welcome. Take care.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Welcome. Bye-bye.
And I've seen like a lot of comments tonight. And one of the best ways to change the Democratic Party is to run as a state precinct officer, a state delegate. Seeing comments like New York Democratic Party is closed. Well, this is where you can make the change, because the precinct officers and state delegates are the ones that vote for the DNC delegates and the DNC committee people who then vote for these guys. This is all elected. Even the elected officials that are DNC committee members are voted on at the state level. And so next year, all of the precinct positions and state delegate positions will be open. And it's not as daunting as it sounds, because you run in your precinct. So you're not facing a whole bunch of people. You're literally at a table with your neighbors. And so if you're in a red area, there can be sometimes that there's only one or two people that even show up. And these roles go unfilled. And these are the people who elect the state party chairs, the county chairs. And so that is where you can make real change in the Democratic Party. And it doesn't happen overnight, but, by getting your friends involved, you can make real change.
Truth.
Totally agree. Absolutely. And that we have to put your best foot forward. I actually was at a meeting, one of the group meetings with one of my women organizations. There was a young lady that took the due diligence to Google who we were, look us up, and randomly show up to a meeting. And that's the type of tenacity and encouragement and fight you have to want to get involved and make that change. And we were so enamored, because remember I was saying, we're looking for that younger generation to come through. And, you come in and just a bunch of ladies having lunch somewhere, you know what I mean? And this young lady took the time to look for us and find us and want to get involved. And that's what you have to do. I always say a lot of times it's just a Google away from learning what you need to know about making change, not only in your community, but maybe in your municipality, in your state, and maybe just even within the nation. So with that being said, Jamie, I believe that is all of our guest speakers for this evening. Is that correct?
Yep. We were supposed to have one more, but it does not look like he is on. But I think we got the best of the best anyway. So
Totally.
What a fabulous night of speakers.
Yeah, this is great. And we did record this, and I will make sure that this gets up on the Demcast YouTube in the next 24 hours sometime. So
we'll be clipping what Shasti said.
We will definitely be doing some clips and maybe sharing some of that on social media as well. Really,
I missed something, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, it was all great. And so just a reminder, if you are interested in joining the Demcast social media team and using your voice to help spread pro-democracy messaging online, you can go to demcast.com. Demcast.com is our core website for activists. Go to demcast.com/team, and you
Is in
will.
chat.
It's in chat. Thank you, Jamie. And that's the best way to sort of get onboarded and to join our to get on our email list, our cell list, our text list, and to get access to some of the tools and apps that we use to spread pro-democracy messaging online. So join us there. You can also check out our Substack newsletter called the Digital Drumbeat, and also this Thursday, keep an eye out for the first episode of the Demcast and 11 Films collaboration called The Dangerous Ones. It's going to be a YouTube show and podcast that'll come out weekly. And I saw a lot of chat in talking about the need for more podcasts and YouTube media, and we're diving in. So I hope everybody jumps in and
We answered the call.
And yeah, we answered the call. So
And then
we'll have,
one last thing. So Wednesday and Thursday, we have hearings for Patel, Gabbard, and RFK. Our toolkit will be updated in real time. So check our socials for the links. We will be putting those out. So there sounds like we have a really good shot
say,
at a couple of
Nick,
these.
Jamie, Nick, and Lee, thank you so much as always for the wonderful collaboration. We always make sure that the Women of Color Coalition is at the table with you doing this great work. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
we love you, Rachel. So
Aw,
thank you so much for joining us.
thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right.
All right,
Thanks everyone
everybody.
for staying late tonight.
We will
Go
make sure that
Birds!
everybody gets all of that information that I just said.
Where's the Go Birds? What does that mean?
Go Birds! Eagles! Philadelphia football Super Bowl.
Okay.
Go Birds!
Jamie's not your audience on that one.
I know. I'm
I'm a hockey fan.
Or TV,
so-
or TV. Thank you, Rachel.
All right, bye everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Have a